Welcome, real deal lesson of the day. We're gonna be talking about bubbles bursting, and a good time to talk about bubbles bursting. What is it? How can you profit from it? How do we define it? It's not just any old down move. It's one of those, probably the more often overhyped discussion or topic of point, because so many people always want a move up to reverse. Why? Because calling a top it's great. You look really smart when you call a top. But not every single pullback is the bubble bursting. And not every bull market means that you're even in a bubble in the first place. So what the heck is a bubble? Before we even get into this, you've got to define what it is. A bubble, at least the way that I'm going to look at it from a trading perspective, it's going to be a ridiculously rapid movement up in price and continued in a group of stocks. It's not SMCI going high and higher and higher and higher. It's got to be a group of names that are all moving up for the same kind of reason. So when you talk about people saying an AI bubble, it's because you have NVIDIA moving, you've got Microsoft at all-time highs, you've got SMCI going crazy, you've got C3 AI, which was making moves and no one even understood why that stock was going up. So you had a group of names that were all not only going higher, but always defying people's expectations. And every single time somebody called a top, it wasn't that it would break the top, it's that it would break the top and then level up again and again and again. And when that starts to outweigh the fundamentals, that's when you get into a bit of a bubble. Bubbles, to me, require people calling tops, getting blown out, calling them again, and not over days, over weeks, over months, and over years. The dot-com bubble, when it burst, it wasn't 5% pullbacks. It was names that were moving up in the market in that bubble that went bankrupt, that became penny stocks. It was the names that eventually survived, giving gigantic haircuts, and they all moved down together. So that's the thing. It's not about one or two individual names. It's about an entire group squeezing higher for a prolonged period of time, defying expectations. If I don't hear analysts calling tops every single quarter for a year without it making a top, then I don't think you're in a bubble. And to me, it's got to be that kind of an extreme. So given that you're looking for that kind of a definition, I want to show the difference between when you get a pullback and a bubble bursting. And the best example, I already said SMCI, so that's what I'm going to lead off here today, because I think it's providing us with a great opportunity to analyze this quote-unquote AI bubble that everyone says that we're in. And this is something that if you go to a daily chart, and come to my daily chart very quickly, in 2023, this was a $90 stock. And you can see when things started to really get out of hand as it broke out in the middle of the year. It was about May. This went from a $90 stock going in the beginning of the year to breaking out at 120. Okay, that's a reasonable 25% upside. Then things started to go crazy in the AI race. And everyone's paying attention to NVIDIA. It's a very similar move percentage-wise. AMD, I like SMCI and for obvious reasons as we move on in the chart. And I'm capping this by not showing you this year on purpose. This went from 90 to 120 to $270. Now that last move in from 120 into 270 is the exact same amount of time that it took you to even get off of those lows. So we get a 25% move turning into a double up, and then, oh, we got an AI bubble. We have an AI bubble, everybody. It's gonna burst, it's gonna burst. When it pulled back all of about 30%. 30% move. That's not a bubble bursting at all. It actually holds a double bottom, and I'll show you what happens. It then just eventually goes higher, does another big rejection, 370 all the way into 230. But what happens to the higher low? Puts in the higher low, puts in a higher high. Lower high, puts in a higher low as well. And it continues to go up, 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 and then look at it holding support, and then it absolutely explodes. So it's not enough that you pull back. You've got to actually show some serious signs of decay, which you might be seeing happen in SMCI. But remember what I told you, it's not just about one name pulling back, it's got to be multiple. Because I can look at SMCI and say, okay, great, down at 700 after getting to 1,000. Has the bubble burst on AI yet? NVIDIA. NVIDIA is still in the top end of its range going into earnings. So when you think about the bubble bursting, well, if it is happening right now, you're in the first inning. And that's what the chart is telling you. And if you're in the first inning and you've seen this prolonged upward move not result in lower highs and then also lower lows on everything inside of the group, then that means there's going to be some trading opportunities, because it is those lower highs where you can start to dig in to some potential trades. And when you burst, you don't just pull back 10%, 20%. You pull back a significant portion. A lot of times it'll be in the 30 and 50% range if it's a true bubble burst in the names that got too frothy, and you trend back down, not just fall for a couple of days and make support. That's what NVIDIA did when everyone thought the bubble burst and it went to 400 and went to 500 and then to 400. That was not some bubble bursting. That was it leveling off and then making another parabolic move. When this breaks 650, breaks 570, when it starts showing you the stairs to the downside, that's when you know you've got something going. And the earnings are going to be coming. That could be the next catalyst, but it's got to be Microsoft, it's got to be NVIDIA, not just SMCI. I want to see multiple names going, and the first stop would be something like NVIDIA. You've got to define tops, so what are we looking for next for this? If the bubble bursts, it's very simple on earnings. If it's anywhere near 740, you can pretty much forget about it. Who cares? If you're breaking towards highs, it doesn't matter. You're looking for the next consolidation level to break down. That would be about this 660. If it fails this on earnings and we're trading 660 to 600, then I want to see that channel hold. And without going above 660, it's got to bust down 600. Then you can start thinking about this bubble bursting. If NVIDIA is holding 600, yes, that's a good pullback off 740, but that's just what it did last time. It did the same thing, 500 to 400. It couldn't break 400. It's got to be under 600. Sellers under $600. And then you've got a little bit of a bubble burst going on there, and then the dip buying is done. The whole point of big pullbacks that are not the bubble bursting is there are still people buying the dip. That stopped happening to an extent on SMCI. It's unproven yet whether that stopped happening in NVIDIA. It's unproven yet whether that stopped happening in AMD. It's unproven yet whether that stopped happening on Microsoft. But the next shoe to drop would be a broadening from SMCI to those other names. NVIDIA's up next, but it's not about it dropping 20%. I want to see sellers underneath that next 25 to 30%, and then you can tell me about the bubble bursting. Because if that is happening, you are trending to the downside, and you're looking for that lower channel to hold where you can start shorting not off the highs, because if you're shorting off highs, then you're guessing. If you're shorting lower highs and breakdowns, then you're participating in the bubble bursting. Everything else is just corrections, pullbacks, and people still buying the dip. And when that's happening, you get a bunch of talking heads talking about, oh, look at this bubble bursting, I'm calling the top, I'm calling the top. It's easy to call a top if you just say every single resistance level on the way up is a top. Eventually, you're going to be right. I would rather be participating in lower highs and signs of weakness like SMCI is now showing you, and I'm watching out for NVIDIA after their earnings. Got to hold underneath 25% down. That's it. It's pretty simple. So bubbles bursting are not the same as pullbacks. It's not the same as short squeezes that unwind. It's about a broadening of the group all falling down, making lower highs, not holding support after a 20% pullback, breaking support. So that's the real deal. Be patient, because when things are trending to the downside like that in bursting bubbles, it's not that difficult to join the trend. But if you anticipate it, you just run that same trap of trying to guess at the highs of the day.